openers.
So this is from Zero Hedge. Could a bombshell discovery render all of Biden's presidential actions null and void? The Biden presidency might have been the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the American people. A shocking investigation by the Heritage Foundation's Oversight Project has revealed that virtually every document bearing Joe Biden's signature during his presidency was signed by an Autopen, except for one. That's crazy. Was he using dot loop? He's using dot loop to sign all of his documents.
Yeah, jot form, e-sign. Yeah. Well, I read this whole thing earlier. The one thing that he didn't use an auto pen for was when he had signed that letter withdrawing from the presidency or the candidacy in 2024. There's like, of all the things, the only thing that we know that he actually physically signed was that withdrawal letter.
Crazy. Was the Afghanistan withdrawal, you said?
No, the withdrawal from his kid. So remember when there's like that weird back and forth moment, and then he announced that he was no longer going to run, then he was going to let Kamala do it.
Oh,
for this last election.
Yeah,
that's the only thing that they know that's been from. It's what per Zero Hedge there.
Oh, that's funny. Okay,
right. So that's like the little only thing we know he didn't sign with Autopen.
That's funny. So Steve Splenda says, sorry if I sound like a black-pilled negative Nancy, just frustrated. Hey, man, we're all right there with you, brother. And it's just one of those things where you start your hands up in the air and say, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Yeah. Elon's getting all the hate now. Yeah. Made just me laugh there. I hope I live that long. What's up, just me?
Yeah, when I'm 89 years old and I'm like, all I want to see is the files and I'll go.
Yeah, right.
I ain't getting buried until I see what Epstein did.
TNT says, I wonder if Hunter's pardon was him or Autopen. Mad News points out not even 60 days yet. That's true. There's plenty of time. Although every day the deportations aren't ramped up means they have to deport more every day after that. The average goes up, which that's the other thing that those are basically the two biggest critiques I have of Trump so far is the mass deportations aren't happening fast enough. And then this whole Epstein file debacle, as well as the JFK kind of stuff. And some of this information, I want to know what's up with 9/11, to be honest with you. More than JFK or MLK or some of these other ones, but
right, I want to know all of them. The main ones for me is obviously Epstein. It's like the most important one, but like I think the 9/11 Commission report, I think is going to be a very significant one to have as well.
Right, they just need to learn from this lesson and just not talk about it until they can put the information out for the American people.
Right.
So continuing here, it says, what makes this revelation particularly damning is that the only document confirmed to have Biden's actual signature was his letter announcing his withdrawal from the 2024 presidential race. That's what you said. Remember when Speaker Mike Johnson revealed his discussion with Biden when Biden couldn't recall signing the executive order halting LNG exports? Now we know why. He probably didn't. The real question is who did? Who was running the country while Biden was not all there? And remember this too, that the mainstream media was telling us that he was, I can never think of the exact quote, but they were all basically telling us that he was fine and dandy, right? And we all know from George Carlin that nobody is ever actually fine and dandy. You're either fine or you're dandy, but you're never both. And if you ever are fine and dandy, nobody ever asks you how you're doing. But
yeah. Well, the good thing with this though too, someone who's I've been like very impressed with as well. Now you're a bit more familiar with him than I am, but this would be Andrew Bailey. So he's the Missouri AG.
Oh, I love Andrew Bailey. This guy is crushing it, dude. I would like to see him replace Pam Bondi, to be honest with you, dude.
Well, that would be sick. I would actually appreciate that. But it was like news to me when I'd first heard of him. But like he was like the only AG like 3 years into Biden's presidency that had actually like filed anything against the Biden administration, which is insane to think about.
Right.
But he's currently leading the charge on all of these Autopen stuff. So he's trying to seek out how you can constitutionally override and void as much as he possibly can via the auto sign signature there. And it's a crazy story too, because, and I can remember the exact way that it happened, but I think it was like a redistricting of like something there in Missouri actually led to him getting into office. He wasn't elected. So he
Yeah,
kind of like fell into power because
he was reelected though in this last term.
Okay.
I believe Jamie said she got to vote for him.
Okay.
But yeah, originally when he was originally inserted, and you're right, it was something about redistricting, and it's funny because that was a backfire from the previous Democrat-led administration for Missouri. They had set it up that way, and then it ended up backfiring on them and got Andrew Bailey into that position. And this dude, I've talked about him before on the show, and I don't know if you'd heard about him before, but you might have heard about him before that. But I was pointing out that he was challenging Letitia James in the
or the New York case.
The New York case over Trump being the gag order that he had. And so that he couldn't, because Trump was on the campaign trail and they had this gag order that he couldn't talk about what was going on with the New York case. And Andrew Bailey was basically saying that because he represents Missouri. So everything that he does is like representing the citizens of Missouri. But he was saying that when Trump comes to Missouri and speaks and does his rallies, the Missouri citizens, the Missourians or whatever they're called, I think it's Missourians. I was born in Missouri. I can't think of it. I was raised in Kansas, but they deserve it was an infringement of their First Amendment to not hear Trump, in his full, basically it was an infringement on their First Amendment. Oh, I'm sorry, girl. Just kicked my dog in the face. She was not even fazed by it, so thankfully. But so he was out there making the case. He's been battling for a lot of great topics. I actually just saw on X. He's an excellent follow on X as well. I just saw it this afternoon, and it wasn't part of our agenda, so I decided to leave it out.
I think this is kind of like a bit more hard confirmation with the Zero Hedge story, with the Biden Autopen situation, which was what we had been thinking, which is who's running the show, because it's not Biden.
Right.
Obviously, there's like the back and forth of like, look at this Biden. This Biden's different. This is Biden 2.0. Like, look, there's two different Bidens they're putting up there. I think you can get a bit far-fetched in that, and then maybe there's a bit of truth to there too. But the reality is like a lot of unelected bureaucrats, handlers, aide, staffers were probably making the decisions for the country more so than the president or anyone elected was making a decision for the country. And I think on that all of it alone, Autopen should have an easy kind of verification or chain of custody, or at least an easy way you can actually verify it, right? When it was signed.
Yeah, what account signed it?
Right. And then be able to look at too, like, where was Biden at? Right? Like, where was Biden at when this got signed?
True.
You can pinpoint to something getting signed in the White House on a specific iPad or iPod or computer, but Biden's like in Delaware. It's like, okay, that's avoidable. It's like now we have some at least circumstantial evidence that he was not president at the time when this was signed. Immediately avoid that. So I hope we can see some of that stuff too.
Earl's daughter has to dip out. Said goodnight, y'all. Sorry I have to go. Have the grandchildren, grandbabies tonight, and it's bedtime. Sweet dreams. Hey, thanks for stopping in. Appreciate you like every time. Go take care of those little ones, and we'll see you. We'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, take it easy.
Let's see here. I think I saw in the chat too that the Chinese Communist Party shouldn't even own land in the first place, so we should just seize it anyways and not knock that off of the $24 billion debt. But whatever justification we have to use to take that land back, I'm down for. But yeah, I think we should take the land back and still charge them the $24 billion in my opinion. But
I'd go even a step further. I'd say if you were born in China, you're going too. Get out. You like the Land O'Lake thing, right? Take the land, but take her off of it. Keep the land, take her off of it. With the Land O'Lake butter, when the all the different brands, when it was like Land O'Lake, Aunt Jemima. There's another bigger one too, Uncle Ben's. All of them just like changed their logo to something entirely more plain and generic and got rid of all the people. Land O'Lakes was funny because they didn't even change the logo much. They just took the Indian girl off of it.
Yeah,
so it's like we kept the land, we kicked her out. Yeah, very funny.
That is funny. So yeah, let's see here. I'm gonna skip down a little bit. Actually, let's read some backstory. The use of the presidential Autopen dates back to the 1950s, and there's been much debate about its legality. In 2013, Obama became the first president to sign a bill into law using an Autopen. He was vacated. Oh, so that's interesting. You know, Barack Obama, we know, is known, has quoted for saying that he would love to continue to be the president and operate from his basement and have everybody else basically be the front man. So the fact that he's the first person to use Autopen and then this situation arise with the Autopen is an interesting connection, right? We'll say that. But his office relied.
With that, I had actually read a little bit about that one in 2013. It was like an emergency thing. And he was like in Hawaii or something. He was like way far away from where he needed to be, but they needed it signed like immediately. And there was some kind of like emergency authorization they'd use. I don't know if it was explicitly that or if they just said it because it was an emergency. That's why he decided to Autopen sign.
Husband, Steve. Husband.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Obama's office relied on a 30-page memo from President George W. Bush's legal team asserting that the president's presence was not required as long as said president had authorized the signature. What's not clear in the case of Biden is who was running the Autopen and whether Biden was aware it was happening. And so that makes me I'm thinking at the same time when I'm reading this, and maybe they did use Biden's account, but just somebody else had the login information, so it might not be as easy to verify who it was that was that was doing this or whatever. But I think that the point that you brought up, that the timing of it, what was Biden doing? You know, was he asleep? Was it past noon when all these things were signed? I mean, that's a big red flag right there, because we know the dude was calling lids on the day at noon for like the last 2 years of his or more of his term. But Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey is demanding that the Department of Justice investigate whether Biden's obvious cognitive decline allowed unelected bureaucrats to essentially run the government without presidential oversight. If this is true, and let's be honest, all signs point to yes. So this is, I believe, an opinion piece, but every executive order, every pardon, and every official action taken under Biden's name could be constitutionally void. Bailey's letter to Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General of the Department of Justice, spells it out perfectly. I write to request that you conduct a full investigation into President Biden's mental capacity in his final days in office. By now, Biden's mental decline is famous. Under the 25th Amendment, his inability to make decisions should have meant a succession of power. Instead, it appears staffers and officers in the Biden administration may have exploited Biden's incapacity so they could use orders without an accountable president of sound mind approving them. That would explain why Biden administration's orders were aggressively much further to the left than any previous president. If in fact Biden's staffers were exploiting his mental decline, those orders are null and void. And so that would apply to the pardons and everything as well. So that would be like I put in the title, a bombshell, right? The evidence is overwhelming. We know that Biden's handlers desperately tried to prevent anyone from meeting with him one-on-one. Even Democratic insiders admit the truth. DNC fundraiser Lindy Lee recently spilled the beans and acknowledged that Biden wasn't running the show. His staff, his wife, and Hunter were. Lindy Lee, again in the news. We talk about her every once in a while. She's a huge fundraiser for the Democratic Party, raised tens of millions of dollars for the Democratic Party. And she feels jaded right now. She feels taken advantage of. And the left has turned their back on her. This lady, this woman, she's going to be raising money for the Republicans for a long time, where she's just going to bow out, in my opinion. I don't know how she could continue doing her job for the Democrats. If she does, it's just more confirmation that the Democratic Party is essentially a cult. The implications were staggering. We essentially had a presidency by proxy, with unelected staffers wielding presidential power while the man himself was barely cognizant. Is cognizant? I don't know. Enough to read a teleprompter. It isn't just a scandal. It's potentially the biggest constitutional crisis in American history. The American people deserve to know who is really calling the shots during the Biden administration. If these allegations prove true, every single action under Biden's name needs to be scrutinized and potentially nullified. Well, I think they're plenty scrutinized, but definitely agree with the nullified part. The truth must come out, and those responsible must be held accountable. Do you think the mainstream media will cover the explosive Autopen scandal? Don't count on it, but JP Media won't back down from exposing the truth. And this is awesome. This is a big time news. And, you know, if the Democrats were in charge and this was about Trump or something like that, they would act, right? They would start passing, what's it called? Introducing articles of impeachment so that they could do criminal charges against him and investigations. They'd be launching special counsels, expedited everything to look into this, right? And I hope that this is something that, you know, maybe Pam Bondi or Kash Patel or somebody prioritizes and investigates. There's a lot on their table. I get it, but this is definitely something that I think goes towards, you know, up to the top 3 on the top 3 list of priority when it comes to their roles. One maybe being the Epstein, not one, but of the 3 deportations, the Epstein list, and then this, which at this point,
yeah,
you know where we stand on the Epstein list.
I wanted to say shout out to House for actually putting that in the Discord. For someone who looks at news every single day, and I look at the trends as well, who's posting about stuff quite a bit, can organize it by, 800,000 posts about this, 80,000 posts about this. This was nowhere on X whatsoever, not in the trending sections. Didn't even see like any kind of like major account even quoting anything about it. So shout out to House for putting that in the Discord. Otherwise, I wouldn't even known it was a story. But also, again, shout out to Zero Hedge. But they even alluded to that in the article as well. Media's not going to cover about it. Media's like not even going to attempt to cover it, along with a few other things too. Especially what we're seeing with what's happening over in Syria as well. That's not getting as much coverage as it should be too. Media has their prerogatives as well, but I was kind of concerned that we didn't see even like a lot of like right wingers posting about it. I feel like it should be a lot bigger of a story than what it is.